You already knew something was being held back, not because someone told you, not because you read about it. You felt it, the way you feel the weight of a room before anyone says what's wrong. Something underneath the news. Something underneath the silence around the news. A gap that was too clean to be accidental. You felt that gap your whole life. And now, for a moment, the gap has a name. On a Thursday night in January, Donald Trump posted something on Truth Social. A few lines. Casual in tone, enormous in implication. He said he was instructing the Secretary of Defense and relevant agencies to begin the process of identifying and releasing government records related to, and I want you to hold these words carefully, alien and extraterrestrial phenomena, unidentified aerial phenomena, UFOs. He ended it with, God bless America. The internet erupted. Of course it did, but something else happened too. Something quieter, happening right now inside the people who have been paying attention for a long time. Not excitement, something more complicated than that. A feeling you might recognize if you've ever been waiting for something so long that when it finally starts to arrive, you don't quite know how to hold it. Because here is what most of the celebration missed. Trump didn't say declassify. He said begin the process of identifying and releasing. Those two things are not the same thing, not even close. The word release sits in the sentence like a door that's been gestured toward, not opened. The word identify tells you something even more revealing. The agencies themselves will decide what gets identified. The same agencies that have kept these files for decades will now determine what is safe to show you. Do you feel that? The architecture of it? The shape of what's being offered and what's being withheld, all in the same breath. This is not cynicism. This is precision. And something about that precision, the way a man who clearly understands language chose those exact words, that's where this becomes interesting, because you can read this two ways. One way is disappointment. A politician doing what politicians do, generating heat without generating light. Saying something that sounds enormous while committing to almost nothing. The other way is stranger, more patient, and it requires sitting with a question that most people jump past too quickly. What if the gap between release and declassify is not a loophole, but a negotiation? What if what we're watching is not the opening of a vault, but the beginning of a very long, very careful conversation between a government and its own past? Stay with that for a moment. There is a history here. Not the history you read in tabloids, but a quieter history, a bureaucratic one, which is somehow more unsettling. In 2017, the New York Times published a story about a secret Pentagon program called AATIP, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. It had been running since 2007, classified, funded with $22 million, investigating UAP reports from military personnel. The story broke like a stone through glass. Not because it confirmed aliens. It didn't. But because it confirmed programs, structures, budgets, career officials whose job was to look at things the official story said weren't there. And then in 2020, the Department of Defense released 3 short videos, declassified. Navy pilots, voices stripped of performance, reacting to something moving in ways that shouldn't be possible. No wings, no engine signature, no explanation. What is that thing? One pilot said. They didn't know. That was the point. That was the entire point of releasing it. The Pentagon saying, in the most careful language available to a bureaucracy, we don't know what this is. Then came the UAP task force. Then the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, the AARO. Official structures, official reports, official language, slowly, methodically building a framework around something that didn't have one before. None of this happened by accident, and none of it revealed what most people actually want to know. The question has never really been, are there things in our sky we can't identify? Military radar has confirmed that for decades. The question is older and heavier than that. The question is, what do they know that they haven't told us? And this is where something shifts, where the story stops being political and becomes something else entirely. There's a pattern in classified information that most people don't think about. A document isn't kept secret just because what it contains is dangerous. A document is kept secret because releasing it would require explaining why it was secret in the first place. And that explanation, that's the political nuclear material, not the content, the context. If the government has held files for 60, 70 years, files that contain anything genuinely extraordinary, not just radar blips, but say material analysis or recovered objects, or internal reports from multiple administrations, all writing to each other about the same ongoing situation, releasing those files doesn't just answer a question. It opens a door onto every administration that kept the secret, every oversight body that looked away. Every time a senator asked and was told there was nothing to find, the story wouldn't be about what was found. The story would be about the architecture of not telling you. And that story is the one no administration has been willing to tell. So when Trump says begin the process of identifying, when he specifically chooses language that keeps the agencies in control of what gets shown, is that evasion? Or is that the only way to move this forward without triggering a collapse you can't manage? That's not a rhetorical question. It genuinely opens in both directions. Here's what we do know, carefully, without decoration. Obama, in 2021, appeared on a podcast and said something that didn't make most of the headlines it deserved. He said, there are objects in the skies that we don't know exactly what they are. He said military pilots had seen things they couldn't explain. He said there are rigorous investigations happening. And then he said, and this is the line, we can't explain the movements. That's a former president, on record, not speculating, describing. John Brennan, former CIA director, said in 2020 that some UAP encounter could be explained by activity from a different form of consciousness. He walked it back immediately, but the sentence had already existed, in the air, in the public record. These men are not prone to carelessness. Something is being said, carefully, through the edges of official statements, through the gaps between what is confirmed and what is denied, through the particular silence that surrounds certain questions when asked in certain rooms. You know the feeling. You've sensed the weight of it even when you didn't have the vocabulary. And here's what the transcript of this moment is really telling you. Not the Trump post, not the headline, but the structure of the thing. The agencies that will conduct this review, the Pentagon, the AARO, the intelligence community, they are the custodians of whatever is there. They will determine what is safe to release. Their criteria for safety is not your comfort or your curiosity. It is national security, which means it is the security of the architecture itself, the systems, the capabilities, the methods of detection that, if revealed, would tell adversaries exactly what we cannot see. Modern UAP cases are not fuzzy light on a phone camera. Modern UAP cases involve simultaneous radar detection, infrared sensors, electro-optical systems, satellite surveillance, evidence across multiple independent platforms, all corroborating the same event. Releasing that evidence means revealing the sensitivity of those platforms. It means telling the world, including everyone watching, exactly how good our instruments are, and therefore exactly how good they need to be to evade them. This is the wall. Not secrecy for its own sake. Not shadowy figures protecting alien truth from a frightened public. The actual, concrete, structural reason why even a president who wants to open the vault may find the vault harder to open than he thought. And yet, something is moving. You feel it. The accumulation of official statements, the creation of formal offices with actual budgets, the Senate hearings, the whistleblowers who went on record under oath, David Grush, Ryan Graves, David Fravor. None of that was happening 10 years ago. The landscape has changed, not in a way that can be easily reversed. The process is slow. It is managed. It is controlled by the same people who built the silence in the first place. But it is a process. And processes, once started, are harder to stop than most people believe. There is something worth sitting with in all of this. You have been told your whole life to locate truth inside official confirmation. If it isn't confirmed, it isn't real. If the government hasn't released it, it isn't established. If the mainstream hasn't named it, you shouldn't be looking at it too closely. And yet, here we are. Official programs, official videos, official Senate testimony, former directors of intelligence choosing their words extremely carefully, gesturing toward things they won't name directly. The confirmation has been arriving in pieces for years. Most people have been too distracted by the drama of each announcement to notice that the announcements, taken together, tell a coherent story, not a story about aliens necessarily, a story about a body of knowledge that was decided at some point not to be yours. Who made that decision? Under what authority? With what justification? And when was the last time that justification was re-examined? These are not conspiracy questions. These are oversight questions. They are the questions a functioning democracy is supposed to be able to ask and receive answers to. The fact that asking them still feels slightly dangerous, slightly embarrassing, slightly fringe, tells you something about how well the architecture has held. Because here is what no document can contain and no declassification can give you. You already carry a relationship to this question. You've had it since the first time you looked up at a sky that was too large to be full of nothing. Since the first time you read something that made you feel like you were being told a partial truth. Since the first time you noticed that the people whose job it was to know things seemed, in this particular area, to be extraordinarily careful never to say what they actually knew. That relationship isn't dependent on what gets released. It was already yours. What changes if something is released is not whether you believe it. You've already made that decision quietly in the privacy of your own attention. What changes is whether the rest of the world catches up to where you've been standing. There's a book called Parallel Realities, and if you've been sitting with these questions for any length of time, the material in it will feel less like discovery and more like confirmation. That quality of remembering something. What Trump ordered or gestured toward ordering is the beginning of a process, not a revelation, not a disclosure, a process. Bureaucratic, controlled, slow, filtered through the same apparatus that created the silent, but processes accumulate. Small releases build public vocabulary. Public vocabulary builds political pressure. Political pressure builds toward moments where the cost of continued secrecy exceeds the cost of transparency. We may not be there yet, but look at where we are relative to where we were. In 2017, the existence of a secret Pentagon UFO program was a revelation that shook loose from a Freedom of Information Act request and landed in the Times like a bomb. In 2024, the Department of Defense has an active office, with a director, with a reporting structure, submitting annual reports to Congress about UAP. That is not nothing. That is not the same reality as 10 years ago. And somewhere in the distance between those 2 points, between the bomb and the annual report, between the explosive and the administrative, something has been normalized that wasn't before. The question itself has moved from the fringe to the file cabinet. That is a kind of victory, even if it doesn't feel like one. The people who have been paying attention know this. You know this. You've watched the slow accumulation, the individual moments that seemed like they might break everything open and then didn't. The quiet continuation of the process underneath the noise of each announcement. You've learned how to hold this particular kind of long waiting, not passive, not credulous, but genuinely, precisely attentive. Because what's actually at stake here is not whether they release a video of a craft or a photograph of a material sample. What's at stake is whether the systems of knowledge we've built, the ways we decide what counts as real, what counts as worth knowing, what counts as legitimate inquiry, are large enough to hold what might be inside those files. And that is a much harder, much more interesting question than whether Trump's post was a promise or a performance. It might have been both. The most sophisticated communicators always leave room for both. On the night he posted, the reaction was immediate, enormous, and mostly wrong, full of people celebrating an opening that hadn't quite happened, or dismissing a gesture that wasn't quite empty. The truth of it lives somewhere in the gap between those responses, in the particular shape of what was said and what wasn't, in the word identify, which puts the agencies in charge, in the word release, which doesn't mean declassify, in the invocation of enormous public interest, which acknowledges the pressure without fully yielding to it. Something is moving, slowly, managed, filtered, but moving. And you, the person sitting with this, who has been sitting with some version of this question for longer than any news cycle, you don't need an announcement to know what you already know. You've been in this room a long time. The light is changing, not because of what was said on a Thursday night on a social media platform, but because the conditions for saying it publicly, officially, with the weight of the presidency behind it, those conditions took decades to build. And they are now built enough that even the most careful political language can no longer pretend the question doesn't exist. The sky is the same sky it's always been. You just have different company now looking at it.